Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and today we're going to be checking out another Telecaster from Fender Japan. This is a model that I've never had. I've played the previous generations, and you saw it last week, the TL62B. This is a 2020 Fender Traditional 60s double-bound Telecaster Custom in the gorgeous Torino red. I'm very excited to get this on the bench and see what it's all about and just how different it is from the older model. Now, I have bought and sold many Fender guitars in my day, but I've never had one in the Torino red. I actually really like it. I would put it second only to Fiesta red for this kind of color. But getting on to the specifics of this guitar, you have an alder body that is finished in a poly, obviously the binding on the top, on the bottom of it as well. Two vintage voiced pickups, and then these saddles, some people say, why did Fender cheap out? Why don't they have brass saddles? It's a bit of a better touch, but really it's period correct. The older ones from the 60s, the originals, they had these steel saddles on them. So you have a three-way switch falling in line with the traditional kind of vibe here going on. Normal volume, normal tone, no fancy push-pulls, no nothing, just straight up telly. But one thing I was curious about with this model, I know a lot of the recent models from Fender Japan do come with CTS pots in them. A lot of the older ones, including the TL62B in the transparent blue that we did last week, that has the mini alpha pots. So I'm going to take the control plate off and we're going to have a look to see what's under the hood. And yes, I was right. This has the CTS pots and the higher end three-way switch on it. That's a nice touch and upgrade. All right, moving on to the neck of this guitar, you have your Fender and your Telecaster logo here. On the American versions, it will say Custom Telecaster. You have a well-cut bone nut, 7¼ inch radius on a rosewood fingerboard. Fret edges are pretty smooth, as I expect with Fender Japan, and I also expect that these frets are going to be pretty level. So let's check out with the fret glue and see how they are. Now, people ask me all the time why I go out of my way to get these Fender Japan guitars, and honestly, it's because of things like that. These frets are perfect. You get peace of mind when you buy a Japanese-made Fender because they get the little things that are really important to the playability and the feel right all the time in my book. I've never had one of these come in where I've had major issues, and this one, again, does not disappoint. All right, briefly checking out the back of this guitar, we do have the vintage style tuners on them. These are not locking though, like they are on the hybrid series from Fender Japan or on the JV modifieds. You have a JD20 serial number, meaning this is a 2020 instrument made in Japan. This neck has a gloss finish on it, but it's not one of those where they used a little bit too much, whereas you're not gonna feel as much stickiness to it as you will on one of the other ones that may or may not have a better quality of a gloss sheen to it, so I really do like that. All right, my initial thoughts on this guitar: craftsmanship, absolutely top quality when it comes to Fender Japan, and this guitar really lives up to that reputation. I did notice though, the neck on this feels a bit different than the one on the previous model, the TL62B. I feel like there's a bit more shoulder on the edges of this neck compared to the older model, but it still feels really good. It has a 7¼ inch radius, it has a manageable weight under 8 pounds, and it really looks the part. But how does it sound? We're going to be playing it through the Mesa Boogie Rectoverb, mic'd up with the SM57 straight into Pro Tools, and without further ado, we're going to do that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now that we've heard what this thing sounds like, I thought it sounded pretty darn good. The neck on this is absolutely noticeably different than the previous generation of the Japanese double bound Telecaster, the TL62B. It's got definitely more noticeable shoulder on it, but if you're somebody that likes a little bit more beef to the neck, this will be right up your alley. The playability of it is fantastic. Fender Japan just knock it out of the ballpark. As we saw, the frets were totally level, no dead spots in it, just flawless as far as that goes on it. I love 7¼ inch radius necks. I find myself, I can't speak for everybody here, but when I play a guitar that has the vintage neck radius on it, I approach it a little bit differently in terms of how I play and my chord voicings and things like that. It's really just a unique experience to me. And if you're somebody that's in the market for a vintage spec Telecaster that has a double bound body, you don't have many options, and that explains why guitars like this one, which cost me significantly more than most of the guitars that I import in from Japan into the United States to resell, and the American vintage 62s have gone up so much in value. The American originals were the old last production guitars that Fender made before they discontinued them that had the double bound bodies on them, but they had the modern radius on the neck. Before that, you had the 64 Telecasters. Those didn't have binding on them, so I mean, it is what it is. And then before that was the 62s that I just mentioned earlier than that. So when you're looking around, if you want something that has the vintage specs and the vintage feel to it, you really don't have many options. This is a really good alternative because you're getting exceptional build quality onto it. The resale value maintains because, like I said, just scarcity, and especially for the Japanese ones, they're a lot harder to find in America, especially depending on the custom color that you're going for here. And there's just not many other options on the market if you're looking for that. If you're somebody, however, that doesn't care about the vintage specs, there are a few other ways that you can get yourself into a double bound Telecaster. One of the newest ones is the JV modified 60s. However, differentiating from this guitar, it does have the vintage style tuners, but they're locking. It also has a 9½ inch radius. It shares the same rosewood fingerboard though, and the bone nut, and the electronics are obviously a bit modernized, 4-way switch, push-pull on the tone knob. However, this guitar is for sale. If you're interested in getting the best possible price for it, there's a link in the description linking you to my store. It is going to be a lot cheaper than it is on Reverb because I don't have to pay as big of a fee to Etsy to sell on GoDaddy as I do on Reverb. But other than that, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about double bound Telecasters. Do you love them as much as I do? Because I don't know, there's just something about this aesthetic. It just screams perfection to me in the simplicity and just how elegant these guitars are. No better word than that, elegant. Love that. I hope to see you guys tomorrow for a different guitar related video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and an extra special shout out to all of you members who have been helping me through this kind of tough time and give me some positive vibes in the Discord, which will also be linked down below. We hope to see more of you engaging and joining this community that we're starting to build going forward. Till tomorrow's video, hope you have a great rest of your day, everybody.